Hey everybody, welcome to Kimmel's Irish Pub. Time for another movie review. Tonight's movie, The Integrity of Joseph Chambers. So, I just looked at his name and I forget. Clayne Crawford. So he's been in a lot of different things, been in a lot of trouble too, I think. But he was on Lethal Weapon, the TV show with Damon Wayans Jr. or whatever, one of the Wayans brothers, or one of the Wayans, I should say. I liked the show, I really did. I had a review of like season 1 ending. That's on here somewhere in my YouTube channel. Check that out. So he was in that, but I liked him in other things. I think he's a pretty interesting character. A Walk to Remember. Whoa, right? So there you have that. And then Jordana Brewster is also in this, who we all know her from Fast and the Furious. She was in a couple of other different movies. She was also in Lethal Weapon, the TV show. She was a psychiatrist that used to meet with him. So that's kind of neat. So this is about, I believe, Crawford's character. Oh, Jeffrey Dean Morgan's also in this. But it's about, I believe it's him, who, he's kind of a family man, but he wants to prove that he's a survivalist and wants to go out into the woods and hunting by himself. It seems kind of harmless the way it's described, but I'm terribly interested. It's only a 6 on IMDb, but only 285 people rated it so far, and it's an hour and 31 minutes long. So I'm going to check it out. We'll see. Maybe a little diamond in the rough, or maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I'll get into it and let you know. Stick around. I'll be back. Hey everybody. We're at the credits of The Integrity of Joseph Chambers. No check-ins tonight because, you know, there wasn't any reason to, really, when we get into it. It's a short film, but you'll understand a little bit more after I go through this. And unlike most of my other reviews, I really have to say right off the bat, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. I have to talk openly about this movie, simply because there's not enough that I wouldn't be able to share anything. I'd be like, I like the movie, I didn't like the movie, that's it, and here's who's in it. You don't want that. You want to hear a little bit more about it. I'm gonna try not to ruin it, but spoiler alert. That's all I'm saying. So as we know, Clayne Crawford plays Joseph Chambers, and Jordana Brewster is his wife. He has 2 kids. Jeffrey Dean Morgan plays, seems like the police chief, but also maybe a relative, very close-knit town in Minnesota. And there's one other guy in it, but you don't see any of these people. It's real. I mean, you do in the beginning, and then at the end, it's 95% Clayne Crawford, and he has recently seemed to have moved to Minnesota. He's an insurance salesman, but he wants to be a hunter. And so he decides he wants to go out hunting by himself, doesn't want to go with anybody else, doesn't want to learn. Of course, he's going against everybody else, specifically his wife, on the fact that he shouldn't go alone. But he decides to. So that's all set up in the beginning. Then he goes into the woods, and like for an hour, it's him just goofing off in the woods. Hour and 31-minute film. So think about that. So that's why it's like, okay, no check-ins, because he's just throwing rocks and skipping them and talking to himself and climbing trees and, all that kind of stuff. Throughout the, he's not really. And then, of course, now, as I get into the spoiler kind of stuff, what happens is he's chasing a deer, and he ends up shooting somebody who lives in the woods. And at first, I thought that's who Jeffrey Dean Morgan was playing, was this hermit, if you will, in the woods. But it wasn't him. Okay, he shows up later. And so, well, and then it becomes like, what would you do in that situation? At first, he thinks he kills him, but then he realizes he actually didn't, and then, but then the guy doesn't want him to take him to the hospital, whatever. Ultimately, the guy ends up dying from his injuries. And so, many different things, and I won't go that far and just ruin everything, but at least I wanted to share that with you, because now it's talking about the integrity of Joseph Chambers. So if this happened to you, and I looked it up, I Googled it, because and I feel bad when I Google things like, what happens if you accidentally shoot somebody? And I put in while hunting, and it also came up with Minnesota, so I was like, alright, that's cool, maybe they know I was watching this movie, because I don't want people to think that's what I'm searching for. But, like, what is the, and it's a, in Minnesota, and probably just about everywhere, it's a second-degree manslaughter. which can be 10 years up to, who cares about the fines? I mean, $200,000 in fines or whatever, but really, I mean, it's 10 years in prison, potentially. Now, they have, mitigating factors which can lower that, but you never know, right? I mean, he could end up really going to prison. I don't know. I've never done enough research to determine what happens with all this. But, as you can imagine, that would weigh a lot in somebody's mind. He's a family man. He's got a good life, got a good wife, all that kind of stuff going on. And so, what do you decide to do? You have different options. You're out in the woods pretty much alone. And that's where it really starts to boil up. So in 30 minutes, because the first hour is him traipsing through the woods. And so I like the play on the mind, I guess, if you will, the thought-provoking plot line. Whoa, how about that one? I do like that. It felt like it takes a while to get there, as it should, right? I mean, this was all build-up for this. So, and that's you have to get through that piece of it. I don't know if there's anything else that they can make it a little bit more interesting, or maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe you should be as bored as Joe is as he's in the woods, for his first time hunting kind of thing. And maybe that's how they wanted you to feel. But I did feel like at that point it was losing my interest. Not knowing, and hopefully maybe if you do watch this, knowing will make it a little bit more interesting, because I had no idea what was going to happen. I've never heard about this movie or seen anything about it, so I didn't know if like a ghost was going to come out of somewhere, or some dragon would drop from the sky and take him, or he would just not do anything and just go back home. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know this big event was going to happen. So I was just like, if something major happens, I'll rewind it and catch it. So that aspect played heavily in what I was thinking throughout the movie. Then when it gets into it, and now you're like, oh, you're like in one of those situations like, this is not good. I feel bad. And how would you handle it? Starts going through your mind, which makes it, not fun, I want to say, but more interesting. So there you go. Again, I'm not going to tell you what he decides to do and what happens and all that stuff. But there you go. That's all I got for you. I think I went in pretty in depth. Hopefully it was, at least my review was helpful. I'm hoping. I'm mixed emotions on the film, on what I would give it. I am around a 6 area. I don't think I'd go any lower. I think when I was first watching it, maybe, but as you get through it, it grows on you, because I think that's the intent. So, all right. And I wonder, like, I'm thinking to myself, this is probably a very low-budget film. Besides the actors' cost, I'm surprised that they would bring in somebody like Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Jordana Brewster. I like them, you know what I mean, and that's great. But for such a small role, you think you could lower expenses by, making me the chief of police. I'll just do it for free, and even bring the budget down a little bit further. So, because it was all shot basically for the woods. They were in the house in the beginning. And then, so, alright, there you go. That's all I got. I don't want to talk anymore because I feel like I'm, rambling on. But hopefully that was helpful, and thanks for tuning in. Kimmel's Irish Pub.